So we just talked a little bit about Beethoven, and I played the excerpt from Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, the Ode to Joy excerpt. And now it's time for us to learn how to play that song. Now, this song's a little more complicated than anything we've played so far, but I think you guys are ready for it. But the first thing we have to do is take a look at the music, get the music up. And whenever I approach a new song, before I do anything, before I do any playing, I look over the music. I take a look with my eyes and see where there might be things I need to look at before I even start to attempt playing the song. So let's just take a look at it now. Starting from the beginning. Is there anything that looks complicated or that looks like we're not sure what's going on? Now I'm looking at the sheet music and I'm going to help you through it a little bit. I'm eyeballing it and I see on the fourth measure a quarter note with a dot after it, followed by a note that looks like a quarter note, but it has a little stem. That's an eighth note. So remember earlier we talked about dotted half notes. Basically, a dot adds on half the value to the note, to the original note. And a dotted half note is 3 counts because normally a half note is 2. 2 plus half of 2 is 1 equals 3. Now we have 1 count note with a dot, which means we have 1 count plus half of 1, so that's 1.5 counts. That other note after it, that's an eighth note. That only gets half a count. So a quarter note gets 1 count, it's 1/4 of the measure, and an eighth note gets half a count, which is an eighth of a measure. Meaning we have 4 counts in the measure. The whole measure is a whole note. The quarter note is dividing it into 4, and the eighth note would be dividing it into 8. So the eighth note gets half a count. If I'm tapping my foot, I think of that usually as half a tap, either down or up. And in this case, it's on the upbeat, so we'll have to tap our foot with that note coming up on the upbeat. Now continuing along, it looks like nothing else new. Fifth measure looks okay, sixth measure, seventh measure. Eighth measure, again, we have that dotted quarter followed by the eighth note. That's a rhythm we'll have to work on a little bit. I just described it technically, and now we'll have to practice it to get it right. Going on, ninth, 10th measure, there we have 2 eighth notes on the second beat of that measure. So again, those are half a count. So those 2 eighth notes together add up to 1 count, 1 whole beat. But we're going to have to break them apart, and we'll get to it, and we'll show you how to do it. And then the next measure also has 2 eighth notes, so that's something new for us to work on. Now, on measure 12, I see a new note, a low note. Now, you've already played its relative in the upper octave, the one that shares the same fingering. It's a D. That low note is a D, and you already know how to play that. Your high D or your middle D, 3 and 3. Let's take away the octave key, and we have to blow our air, really open up our throat and let the air go down like a low note, just as if you were speaking a low tone, because sometimes those low notes take a certain openness in the throat to really speak them out, just like speaking in a low tone. So that's a low D. They're the last note there, that low note below the staff. All right, and going on, talking about it, let's look at the last measure. That's another measure with the dotted quarter followed by the eighth note. So we'll get to that in a second. Let me play, so you can hear it without anything else, the fourth measure. That's the dotted quarter followed by the eighth note and then a half note. So I'll give you a tempo so you can hear it, and let's try it. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how that rhythm goes, okay, on that measure. And any other time we have that type of rhythm, it will be the same. So we're not going to go over each measure yet on that. Let's look at measure 10, just to see how that rhythm goes. I'm going to play that one for you. Follow along. Measure 10. 1, 2, 3, 4. You see those eighth notes, how they fit in there? Okay, let's try it one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. next measure has a very similar rhythm, so we'll leave it for right now. Now we've looked over the piece, let's go back to the top and start working on it. Now I think that you probably can play the first 4 measures if we do it very slowly. Let's try it because you've been practicing and I think you can get through the first 4 measures without having to stagger it too much. Let's just work on the first 4 measures. Here we go. Very slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that was the first 4 measures. Now look, I'm seeing something, a pattern here. The second 4 measures look exactly the same. So measures 5 through 8 are exactly the same as the first 4 measures. So really, we don't have to learn that again, but we might as well play through it. Let's start from the top and play through the first 8 measures, okay? Here we go. 1, 2, ready, play. So that's how the first 8 measures go. Now we're getting into the harder measures here. Measure 9 through measure 12. That looks like the hardest part of the song. Let's take a look at that. That's the new part. Measure 9. Let's just do measure 9 by itself because it's different. 1, 2, ready, play. Okay, no problem for that one, right? Let's go on to the next measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. Really, it's kind of like an embellishment of the measure before. That's what those 2 8th notes are, but it's a little different, so it's something to consider while you're playing it. And the measure after that, similar rhythm. Let's look at that. Measure 11. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's try it again. 3, 4. Now let's see if we can go those 3 measures from 9 up to measure 11. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty good so far, I think. Let's go on to the next measure. That's where we've got our new note, our low D. Now the low D is going to take a little bit of finessing to get that note out. Even for me, a professional saxophone player, I've got to use my tongue when I hit that note or else it won't come out very good because it's a low note, it takes a lot of air. So make sure your airstream is really strong when you go to that low D. Let's try it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Really takes a lot of air and a lot of strength when you to play that low note. Let's do it again. 3, 4. Just really go for it when you hit that note. Let's try the whole section from 9 to 12 again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I think we're starting to get that part. Now let's go to the next measure. Let's scan those measures a little bit. You know what? I don't think I really need to practice those measures because those are the same as the measures we've already played. The measures 5 through 8, same, last 4 measures exactly the same. So let's give this a whole thing a play. I think we're ready to play the whole thing. Let's try it. We're going to do it 2 times. Once, just straight, and the next time we'll try to be a little bit expressive and use some dynamics. I know they're not marked, but we have to be creative. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the whole piece. Now let's try it again using some dynamics, and there's something else I'd like to remind you about. I've talked a little bit about here and there about breathing, finding the right spots to breathe. Now ideally on this piece, I think because each 4-bar phrase ends with a half note, that will give us some time to take a nice big breath. So let's try to take our big breaths right after the half note after 4 bars. Now if you have to take a breath before that every 2 bars, that's okay for right now, but you have to sneak your breath in at the end of the note, cut off early, and make sure you come in on time for the next note. That's very important. More important to leave early and arrive early than the other way around, to leave late, okay? And arrive late, that's the worst. So here we go. Dynamics, 1, 2, ready, play. So there you have it, Ode to Joy.